Take a look at what your Second Continental Congress information is going to look like. What the 8th graders do is we meet together in the media center. We're dressed up as our delegates for the Second Continental Congress, and we debate the actual issues and things that go on during the Second Continental Congress. The actual Second Continental Congress was from May 10th, 1775 to July 4th-ish, 1776. They also met during the Revolutionary War so they could go over what was going on during the war. But our timeline is going to be from May to July, 75 to 76. Now, for some time, the colonies had been corresponding with each other, writing each other letters and notes about the British taxes and how the colonists were reacting to each other. Now, some colonies really didn't care. Georgia wasn't really affected. South Carolina wasn't really affected. But Boston, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, those colonies were heavily affected by the taxes and heavily affected by what Great Britain was doing to the colonies. Now, after the Intolerable Acts were passed, a First Continental Congress meets in Philadelphia in September 1775. All 13 colonies except Georgia met, and they were discussing a handful of issues. What do we do about the Intolerable Acts? They also discussed boycotting British goods. And then they said, you know what we're going to do? We're sending a letter to King George III saying we're boycotting goods and we're frustrated with these taxes. Well, then all of a sudden in April 1775, the battles at Lexington and Concord took place. There was not supposed to be battles or a war or anything, but there were a militia forming in Massachusetts and in other colonies where the average citizens were meeting to discuss maybe we should be ready in case the British invade our areas. In Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts, about 10 miles outside of Boston, it became evident as a battle took place where a handful of American colonists were killed and about a dozen or so British soldiers were killed. So now we're actually engaged in war. So finally, in the fall of 1775, 56 delegates, you guys, from all 13 colonies were chosen by their governments and their colonies to meet in Philadelphia. But there was no way anyone predicted that there would be independence even voted on. So what we're watching and what we're going to watch is John Adams' HBO series, where we're going to take a look at how the actual Second Continental Congress met. Who were some of the key figures? What did they discuss and debate at this Continental Congress meeting? After we have that information in our flowcharts, it's going to be our job to then, quote unquote, meet in Philadelphia. We, as your delegates, will discuss some of the problems that were faced. We, you guys, will be dressed up in our finest colonial garb, and we will assume the position of these delegates. We will read some of the letters that the delegates actually received. We will determine the fate of the 13 colonies based off of the events from the French and Indian War all the way to the battles of Lexington and Concord. So we'll be discussing the Stamp Act, the Quartering Act, the Townshend Acts, the Boston Massacre, the Tea Act, the Boston Tea Party, and the battles that took place. You have all been assigned delegates from the actual Second Continental Congress. And this is the actual room in Philadelphia, now called Independence Hall, Carpenter's Hall back in the day, where the delegates actually met. So you'll be sitting with your delegations. Now, when we meet in Philadelphia, make sure that you come dressed for the occasion. Generally, what boys wear is white baseball pants and then a white dress shirt and a sport coat with black shoes. Girls generally wear black leggings and they wear high-knee white socks, a white dress shirt, and then they also wear a sport coat. I'm going to take a look at some of these things. If you want to get a hat or a wig or whatnot, by all means, go for it. You don't have to. I really encourage you to make signs or effigies or print something to give to your fellow colonies. We'll meet for about 3.5 hours, and I do give a lot of A for the days for enthusiasm. We unfortunately aren't going to have the Continental Breakfast. That's from the previous years. But here's an assignment that you guys have, okay? This is due the day of the Second Continental Congress. In MLA type format, 12 font, Times New Roman, single-spaced, 5-point increments based on what your details are, you have to answer the following questions based off of all the content we've learned about in the American Revolution. So, you'll have a one-paragraph argument what you think the colonists should do now that blood has been shed in Massachusetts. This is your opinion on what you think we have learned based in class and also based on your delegate. You have to answer the following questions in one paragraph or 2 paragraphs, depending on how detailed you want to be. Should the colonists remain loyal to Great Britain at this time, meaning just before the Second Continental Congress? Do you think the colonists should fight against the British in these colonies? Because the British are stationed in some of the colonies, particularly New York and Boston. Do you think the colonies should continue to boycott goods from Great Britain? Why or why not? Should the colonies ask other countries to help? Maybe ask the French, the Spanish, or Native Americans to fight against the British? Do you think the colonists should send a message or a letter to King George III in Parliament? If so, what do you think they should do? And do you think the colonists should create an army? These are questions, again, based on the events from 1754, French and Indian War, all the way to the First Continental Congress. So based off of all the information you've learned, this is what you're trying to answer. Don't worry about this. You don't have to worry about this part. You already did the Road to Revolution flowchart, so you're all set. But you all each have a sheet. Your delegate template, which is on the back, it's right here. Your delegate template will be filled out. I have 4 books in my classroom that you can use to answer these questions. And also, going to colonialhall.com will show you each of your delegates. You look for the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and you answer these questions. Who are you? What colony you're from? About how old were you? And then a 3-sentence explanation, just telling me who they were, maybe a job or 2 they had. And then also, did they sign the Declaration of Independence? There are 2 that don't sign the Declaration of Independence. And then Google this and practice your signature below. Now, we're watching one of these videos in class about what the Second Continental Congress looks like, but here's some pictures of what the delegates dressed up like. See the white shirt, the khakis or baseball pants, and then the wigs, the girls wearing the sport coats. In some cases, people, the baseball pants, the black shoes, and white socks. Some people like to buy the tricorn hats. It's fun. So this is what I would like you to come dressed as. Some people even buy the costume and they get it. But these are the expectations. This guy, he's really ready to go. But I want you guys to dress up and bring signs and be ready to discuss what your colony thinks you should do. You're each going to have a little paragraph summary on your tables that explains how your colony feels going into the Congress. And then we're going to be sitting together debating these issues, talking amongst ourselves to try to figure out what should we as the delegates do at this Congress. So we're going to be debating some things for about 3 hours. We're going to be talking about the issues during the actual time period. And then hopefully we can answer these questions together. Should we answer these questions together? Maybe we'll create an army. Maybe we'll declare independence. That's up to you guys. So it's up to you to bring these roles alive. I hope you enjoy it, and I'm really excited for us to meet together and pay very close attention to what you read about the American Revolution. Maybe it's independence. Huzzah!